Hello, welcome back to the Megan Dahmer podcast. I am Megan, and I am grateful you are choosing to be back here with me. We're in episode 25, where I have taken you from the beginning of Michael's cardiac arrest and his time in all the hospital systems through working out this brain injury, and now they've sent him home, and we are figuring out what life is like at home, living with this brain injury and memory loss, and plans and dreams and hopes uprooted and just kind of tossed in the air. And what do we do now? So we are at that point in our journey, and I'm just going to continue sharing about what things were like for us. And so we are under a sort of umbrella of care, right? I talked about the neurologist we found in Richmond, which was incredibly helpful to have that. But at the end of the day, there's not much that anybody can do for us. So we are home. We are continuing to go to therapy multiple times a week. He's in speech therapy and he's still in occupational therapy. He was discharged from physical therapy early on. So we're not doing physical therapy anymore. That part of his health, thank the Lord, has bounced back. But we're still doing speech and occupational therapy. So every day, it was like 3 to 4 times a week. I would drive him to speech and OT. They were in the same building, and we would do our same routine. Every day we would park in the same spaces. We would walk through the building. We would ride the same elevator. We would go to the same waiting room. We would check in the same. We would wait to be called back. And I continued to attend every meeting with him because I wanted to see the progress. I was heavily invested in it, right? So at Shepherd Center, Michael never once remembered a name or recognize the faces of his therapist that he did see every day consecutively, multiple times a day, never once remembered. For speech and occupational therapy at home now, because he was showing signs of being able to create new memories, he started to get familiar with the building and was learning to recognize the faces of his two therapists. So every day, his speech therapist, his name was Paul, and he would come and he would say, "Hey, Michael," and, take him, would follow him back to his office. And the first question would begin is, "Can you tell me my name?" And in the beginning, he would always introduce himself as, "I'm Paul, I'm your speech therapist." And Michael would, be kind and greet him, "Hi, Paul." And then after we'd been there for several weeks, Paul would try to ask Michael what his name was. And Michael rarely got it right. With some prompting and starts with the letter P and narrowing it down, Paul would give three choices. Michael would eventually guess Paul, but that doesn't really count, right? That's not pulling the name out of his memory. So anyway, he's still unable to do things like that. We're also, a typical therapy session would look like maybe a worksheet of logic exercises, or get the iPad out and he would have to listen to a 3-minute story and then answer 4 or 5 questions based on the short story he just heard. And it would be a lot of recall. And Michael would get half wrong, half right. Something that me sitting there listening to, this was elementary level type quizzes. But again, for memory deficits and the inability to retrieve information quickly or at all being one of Michael's big obstacles, those types of tests were hard for him. Paul would also quiz him on multiplication facts. He would go through 20 simple, 1-digit multiplication facts. He would give them 20 questions. He would fire them off 7 times 5. 8 times 6. And Michael would have to do the answer real quick. And sometimes he would race me. And usually I win. Sometimes I didn't. But, it's fine. A lot on my mind, right? So that's kind of what our therapy sessions look like. But anyhow, one time we were sitting in occupational therapy outside the speech therapy room. And Paul comes over and just to check on Michael. And he says, "Hi, Michael." And Michael sweetly is like, "Hey, good morning." And Paul asks Michael to guess his name. He said, "Can you tell me my name?" And Michael just kind of was quiet for a little bit. And then Paul finally gave him the prompt. "Okay, it starts with a P." And so Michael goes, "Is it pup?" P-U-P, pup. And Paul goes, huh, you know, I've never been given that name before. And I am already in silent laughter in the corner, like unable to contain myself because pup, why in the world, Michael, would that be your first guess for the letter P? Who names their kid pup? I don't know. Also, like, but just it was hilarious. But Paul became pup after that. And no, Michael did not remember that. And eventually he began to be able to recall the name Paul. I still cannot remember if Michael was being funny or if that's the first short name that came to mind. Anyhow, just every day. It was like that every day in speech therapy. And I had bought a book of these brain puzzles for Michael to do based on his time in therapy because it was really good exercise for him. But he would come home and do a page at a time, and he did find that there was an answer key in the back of that book. So one time I remember leaving him at the kitchen table and going and doing some household chores and coming back and checking his work and being like, wow, how did you get that? And then he like looks up at me real sheepishly and his hand is like stuck in the back of the book and he flips it open and he's like, there's an answer key. And I was like, oh, clever. Also like applicable in the real world because you oftentimes are given answer keys in life. So if that's how you're going to solve it, great. But Michael, let's try to get these things on our own without the answer key. So anyhow, that is our therapy world. The neurologist also recommended at this time last summer that we look into hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I had not heard of it until this process, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy is done in this pressurized chamber where the patient goes and sits in the chamber. You can have a soft shell chamber, like kind of an inflatable one, or a hard shell chamber. And the hard shell chambers can operate at higher pressure levels. So that is what Michael was recommended to do. You sit in the chamber at, what is it? You sit in a pressurized chamber with 100% oxygen inside. And these things are supposed to promote healing and reduce inflammation. And basically, you're getting just a ton of oxygen pumped into your blood and into your tissues at a much higher rate than we normally are sitting here living and breathing. So it's really ideally really good for you. And there are some wildly successful stories of patients of all types of injuries using these pressurized chambers and seeing healing. So it also made a lot of sense to me because if his anoxic brain injury was due to the lack of oxygen, then this opposite effect of increasing the oxygen in his bloodstream, like it could only help promote healing in his brain, right? So it was kind of this like no harm, no foul, let's test it out kind of thing, except for the fact that it is ridiculously expensive. So our insurance did not participate with it. So you'd be paying out of pocket. And the neurologist found a place in Virginia Beach locally that we could go to. So we tried it out. And I mean, it is hundreds and hundreds of dollars at a time. So they sell these thousands of dollars like package. I mean, I think the first package was like $3,500 for 20 sessions or something. And you're supposed to do these sessions like back to back, 3 to 5 days a week, ideally 5 days a week. You come in and Michael would sit for about 90 minutes. So we found this place. I committed to the sacrifice of the financial burden of paying for it. And I mean, at this point, again, like a couple episodes back, I mentioned our family's goal was healing. So if our family's goal and vision is healing right now, then our resources, as painful as it might be, needed to be allocated towards things that would promote healing in Michael. And this was a trial. So let's go for it. So he sits in this chamber for 90 minutes at a time, and it's real quiet. I think if I didn't actually sit in it myself, but it's kind of loud. They say a lot of people fall asleep in it. They give you a pillow and you wear a mask. And Michael asked to bring a book in with him. So every time he would bring, the first half, it was his giant Bible. he would bring his Bible into the chamber with him. And I would sit in the waiting area. I would bring some work to do, bring my own book to read. Michael would do hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and it's like this like clamshell chamber. So every time he would come out of the chamber, when he was done, they would lift it open. He would crawl out of the little door like an astronaut and have his big old Bible with him. And every single time he goes, man, the Bible is crazy. And he would say this to the workers there, that they get to know their clients. So they knew who he was and would talk to him, use his name and everything. But every time Michael would get out and say, man, the Bible is crazy. And he would like be reading something in the Old Testament and he would say, did you know that Gideon, blah, 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 blah. But it was like the same story every time and the same comment. Every time he crawled out of that chamber, man, the Bible is crazy. So it was funny and sad to watch him do that. But we did that for a whole month. And after the Bible, he had this giant biography on President Grant. And he would bring that into the chamber. And he's laying on his back, and these books are giant that he's holding up. So I don't know if he was reading the whole time or if he actually fell asleep. He didn't know. He couldn't tell me what he was doing. But same thing, when he would crawl out of the chamber after he was reading the Grant biography, he would come out every time and say, man, how do we have quotes from these people who lived so long ago? Okay, great thought. But again, he would say that every time. Just kind of like his mind was blown while he was in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I didn't notice crazy, huge leaps and bounds of improvement. However, I am the only measurement of success or failure, or what are we seeing? What effects of this therapy are we seeing? Because Michael cannot tell. No one else is monitoring him closely. It's just my word and my observation. So pressure's on, Megan. You better be right. So I truly felt like there was an increase in his just general cognitive awareness during the time of hyperbaric treatment, hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment. Not that his memory was getting better, but his awareness. Like, he wasn't so much of the quiet, like, vegetable state. It was more like a little bit more engaged, a little bit more social, a little bit more aware of things. And that was a huge win, and that's a huge improvement. We unfortunately have not gotten to continue since then because, well, the place went out of business, so that's a little unhelpful. And I think there are other places in town, but it's so expensive. I would love to explore adding that back into his routine now, but I don't have access to it, and we don't have the resources. So maybe one day again we can do that. But I do think that it was worth it. And if none of those barriers mattered, like, I'd try to get them there. So if you're listening and wondering if it could be something good for a loved one or yourself, like, I'd say, yeah, if you have the ability, take a risk and try it out. So back to Michael. As his level of awareness seemed to increase a little bit, so did anger. Now, we are so fortunate that Michael's personality remained largely the same, which was, kind and thoughtful and gentle. And Michael, prior to his accident, that's who he was. So like we got that. And he has sweet humor, and he is highly intelligent and highly thoughtful. And you can kind of see that at this point in his healing. But anger, because of his brain injury, his prefrontal cortex was clearly damaged. He does not have the same inhibitions that you and I do. He did not have proper filters. He's saying things, whatever comes to his mind. And same thing for regulating these big basic emotions like anger. He didn't have a regulator. So at this point in healing, and my point with talking about his personality was, I know that there are some brain injury patients that they wake up from their accident and they are angry and they are very difficult to deal with. And I am so sorry for those families that experience that, because that would be awful. Thankfully, that was not Michael most of the time. Michael was kind. And so these this uptick in anger was new for us as a family to experience, new to watch him have anger, which of course he had anger before his accident, but it was filtered, right? Filtered through a mature adult male's brain. Now, at this stage in healing, anger didn't have anywhere to go but out. And there were a few instances that stick out in our mind. And unfortunately, our kids were around to witness this too. What would happen is he would try to step in as the adult. So, like if the kids were bickering, or if the kids, they need to come from their playroom downstairs, and if I was in the kitchen and I would say, "Hey, Michael, could you open the door and call upstairs and tell the boys it's time to come down for dinner?" If they did not behave the exact way Michael was wanting them to in that moment, it would cause anger. Like it's just very black and white. There's no room for nuance in Michael's thoughts, like which as parents, we actually operate out of a lot of nuance. But for him, it was just black and white. You obey, you don't. And when they wouldn't, according to his standard at that time, it would make him angry and he would act out, not physically at them, never did that, but like whatever he was holding at the time usually got thrown onto the ground. And that is very, very alarming and different. That was not something that our family did ever. Like that's not how he parented. That's not how I parent. Anger is a very normal and basic human emotion, but like we tempered it usually, right? The first time this happened, I was gone with Carmen. We were out of the house at her counseling appointment. And I get a call on our way home, and it's my middle son, Brooks, calling me, which doesn't normally happen. So I was like, "Hey," and he's on the phone. He says, "Mom, Dad got really upset and he threw our food on the ground, and now there's food all over the kitchen and Dad is mad, and what do I do?" And I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, what?" So this stage in life, we were still getting meals brought to our house like 3 nights a week, and it was the biggest help. And I miss those days. Oh my gosh, I miss those days. It is hard to feed our family. So because we have so many food restrictions. So we have stopped the meal deliveries, but man, those days were amazing. So we had been given, someone brought a meal over and had delivered it while I was out of the house with Carmen at her counseling appointment. Apparently there was some verbal moment between the boys and Michael, and they didn't listen, or they said something he didn't like, and he takes the whole tray. It was like in this big aluminum tray, like this baked chicken and sweet potatoes and regular potatoes and vegetables, and like hot and steamy and delicious. He took it and he just chucks it on the ground all over our kitchen floor. We have a dog. Dogs like to eat food on the ground, okay? So it's not salvageable at this point. So when I get that phone call, I am thinking so many things. I'm thinking, no, Michael just got angry and upset and I wasn't there to watch out for the children. No, Michael just got angry and upset. This is new. What did he throw? How much of a mess did he make? That's our dinner. I don't have anything now. Like, and then also the I say trauma, but for the boys watching and experiencing that with their dad, like that, they're going to remember that moment forever because that was a first for them. So it's not capital T trauma, but like the moment of standing in the kitchen and like seeing something like that happen with an adult whom you love and respect usually. So that was their first experience with him and his inability to stop how just the anger inside. And that happened a few more times. And with me around, one time, similar scenario, the boys didn't do what he asked right away, and he got mad and he slams the door. He had 2 drumsticks, like physical beat the drumsticks in his hand from somebody's drum kit. And he took them and he chucks them on the floor in our kitchen, and they go like straight into our wood floors. There, to this day, there are 2 marks in the very center of my kitchen in a spot that's not covered up by rugs, but there are these gashes in the floor from where my strong husband threw those drumsticks in anger. And it it frightened us because an outburst is frightening. And then Michael storms off after he does that. So he doesn't stay. The anger, nobody's in danger. His anger doesn't linger because nothing lingers in Michael's memory right now. So he storms off, and then a few minutes later, he's totally fine. But we are left standing in the kitchen, me looking at the gashes in my floor, being like, awesome. Now I will forever have this memory of this moment standing here in my kitchen. And awesome, you did that in front of the kids. And great, who is this? And those kinds of things came with the stage of healing, of a greater level of awareness of himself, and the awareness that people weren't doing what he wanted when he wanted it. And now that was something we had to be aware of and work through. And it it was a lot. It still is a lot. When that began to happen, I began to feel very hopeless and isolated. And I remember a couple times like just having to run back to my room. And one time I just like crumpled down on the floor in my closet, heartbroken, like sobbing, because I remember telling the Lord, like, this is my husband. I don't, I can't see, I can't see a future anymore, Jesus, with like who he used to be, the man who he used to be. You, Lord, have to be enough for me, because I think I've lost my husband, who he was to me. I think he's gone. Therefore, Lord, you have to be enough. And like that prayer just came out through sobs, and like I'm saying the right things to the Lord, but I'm having a really hard time believing, like, how are you going to be enough, Lord? Like, where are, like, I need you physically. Like, I need someone to physically fill the gap that is Michael now. But it's got to be you, Lord, because like Michael, Michael's still here. Like, I can't. It was the most confusing and heartbreaking feelings. And I remember also another time just like being in the shower and hardly being able to breathe because I was sobbing and crying and just like missing my husband, missing and hurting. And it was the first time where my heart was aching so badly that I realized that like heartbreak and heartache are real human feelings. They are real physical experiences, because oh my gosh, do I feel it in my chest, my heart. Like I'm in pain and the breathing is hard. I cannot choke down enough air. Like just really like movie moments. When I say movie, because you see these things in movies, right? Thinking like that's not really how people act, but oh my gosh, I was driven to that place by our scenario and just my pain of of seeing our life, what it had come to, like wondering again, is this what it's going to be like forever? Is this the stage of healing that Michael is going to be stuck at? Will I be dealing with anger outbursts? Will we be walking on eggshells? Is this, has his relationship with the kids now been severed forever because of things like this? And obviously with mine, so another layer of all that, like the anger outbursts, he cannot reason with me at all. So I would try to approach him and be like, hey, let's talk about what just happened. Like you got angry because of this, and his eyes would be different. His eyes looked different. Like the whites of his eyes were so big and wide, like it's like he couldn't contain the rage that he was feeling inside, and he couldn't reason with me. Like he could not follow the steps of just pure logic, or follow like why I don't think we should respond this way. Like he was incapable of doing it. not because of who he is, but just because of the brain injury. And so those conversations that I was having with him a lot were like slowly chipping away at my hope that I had, the hope that I was holding on to, that Michael would be Michael again, and he would be my life partner again, and he would be exactly who he was. It was happening so often, and I was like breaking. My heart was breaking. And the amount of times that I have experienced that heart pain since then is more than I care to. And I have so much more empathy when people use that word now. And I take you seriously. And I'm grateful for it. I don't wish I had it, but I am grateful to be able to empathize with that feeling now, because I validate it. It is real. But I keep coming back to still like my prayer of, Lord, you've got to be enough. I don't know how that looks practically for you, are this being who I believe in fully, but how do you, Holy Spirit, replace what I've lost? Like, how do you come and fill the void in my heart, in my head, in my soul? Like, how do you replace who Michael was? How do you replace a human? And I don't fully have the answers, other than knowing that he is capable, and he has done that for me in times, like filled me with so much of his holy presence, that I am like, yes, you are enough, Lord. You are enough, and you will hold me and guide me, and you will be my rock. But I'm still learning. I'm still learning that. But I think any encouragement I have towards you is like, make that your prayer too. If you ever find yourself in that place, or just in a place of wanting more of Jesus, saying, hey, you've got to be you've got to be enough for me, Jesus, because nothing on this earth is satisfying me the way I need right now. He wants to be there, and he is, and he wants to be that person that you run to fill it. And I think that was his design from the beginning, but we just get so caught up in our life. And those of us in marriages, we get so caught up in like thinking that our spouse, our partner in our relationship, has to be the person that fills every need for us and makes us whole. And that's not true. Like, only the Lord is the one that makes us whole and fills every need and can meet every need for us. And so our dependency on him was by design. We just get a little distracted, and our dependency tends to fall more on the people that we're doing life with. And I don't think that is right. Like, I do, even in all this pain that I have been feeling, like, I'm like, thank you for the chance to set myself straight, right? Like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to put things in order. I don't know. But anyhow, that is all for today. I'm getting to a part in the story that's really difficult for me to talk about. So I'm not planning ahead very well, because life is absolutely too much for me to handle right now. But like, in full disclosure, right now, this day and age, it's a lot. So I haven't recorded a ton of these ahead, but I'm giving you a heads up that I'm getting to something that's really still painful for me to talk about. My goal and hope is to release this episode, in order, like every week. But if I need to pause for a week, hang with me. I will be back. I just want to give it the proper attention and time, and figure out how much to share, what not to share, what would be beneficial for my memory keeping and edifying to any of you. But this is just a quick little like, hey, I'm going to do my best to release an episode on time. But if I don't, it's simply because it's a lot and I needed some time to do it right. But anyhow, thanks for sticking with me. It is good to be together. I will see you all next time here on the podcast.